Very recently in Europe we had a very severe heat wave, but also floods, wildfires, and so on, and the list is very big. And what you have seen is that since the beginning of the decade as well, the number of sites that have faced climate-related hazards has increased by 40%. So the conclusion here is that these sites are already facing climate change really on their face. And the projections is that this will increase. By 2050, the number of sites that are projected to experience additional climate and biodiversity pressures should triple. And now we're moving a little bit into, let's say, the natural aspect. So I'll make you travel a little bit through some fascinating ecosystems. Let's start with forests. So forests in World Heritage Sites cover 69 million hectares. That's mainly the size of Germany. And you have forests in more than 220 sites. This is basically, you have forests in almost all natural sites if they are not marine sites. And these forests, they store an estimated 13 gigatons of carbon underground and in the biomass. So just for you to have an idea of what is 13 gigatons of carbon. Well, this is basically the equivalent of the carbon contained in Kuwait's proven oil resources. And if this carbon is entirely released into the atmosphere as CO2, it represents almost 1.3 times the global annual CO2 emissions from fossil fuels. So here you can really see why we need to protect these sites. Imagine if this carbon really goes to the atmosphere. But what we have seen is that these sites these forests are more and more threatened by wildfires. So this is something that is really hitting hard at natural World Heritage Sites. As of today, so these sites have lost since 2000 4.5 million hectares of forest. That's more or less the size of Switzerland. And most of these loss is due to wildfires, almost 80%. And here you can see some wildfires that have hit some sites. And I would like to bring your attention to the one in your left side, which is the Wood Buffalo National Park in Canada in 2023. So you had a wildfire there, what we call a mega wildfire, that released the equivalent of 190 million tons of CO2. That's roughly equivalent to Argentina's, coming back to Argentina, annual fossil fuels emissions. So you can see, one single fire can emit what the whole country emits in 1 year. So this is really an important thing to keep in mind of how dangerous wildfires can be. And what we have seen as well is that fire emissions in the tropics has increased since a couple of years. And here this graph really shows that, it's revealing. Also, other climate related events. Why these are so important to compare? One single climate event can make a site flee a carbon sink to a carbon source. So for instance, a couple of years ago there was a hurricane in Dominica that destroyed some of the forests that they are there. And basically, this event made the site become a carbon source. So by carbon source, I mean that this site now releases more carbon than absorbs more carbon. Same happened, for instance, in Australia, in the Greater Blue Mountains, because of the fires in 2019-2020. And now moving a little bit to a colder place. So now let's move a little bit to the glaciers. So glaciers are extremely important in the sense that they are one of the most visible indicators of climate change. you can see a glacier retreating with your eyes. No need of satellite and all that. You can really see that. And when it comes to World Heritage, glaciers are extremely important because almost 10% of all glaciers worldwide are located in World Heritage sites. But projections are a bit dire in the sense that glaciers in at least 1/3 of World Heritage sites are expected